I've been thinking about drones at home at Disneyland for quite some time, so this is kind of a Bizarro Disneyland Forward series video where I am out on location at Disney Springs capturing some content that I feel could show us what we could expect for things back home at the Disneyland Resort. But first, let's break down this drone show, what it means for Disney storytelling and what it means for us, Disney fans, in particular, fans that love to go to Disneyland back home on the West Coast. Bricky here, coming to you from Disney Springs on my Walt Disney World trip, where I'm coming out here to film all kinds of content for you back home at Disneyland. Because come to find out, same company owns both resorts, and they repeat a lot of the things at both resorts. And like I always say about this channel, we study Disneyland's past so we can better predict its future. And we're also going to start studying Walt Disney World's habits and which of those we could predict that we'll find back home at sweet, sweet Disneyland. All right, let's break this drone show down. I am so pumped. I saw the first showing at 9 o'clock, absolutely loved it. Decided to stay till 10:45 to see it again. One of the things that's exciting to keep in mind about this drone show is this is the worst this show will ever be. Because it's important to keep in mind that as technology moves on and evolves, that these shows will only get better. So if tonight's show seems a little primitive to you, no big deal. We are in the early stages of this technology, and by the time it works its way back to Disneyland, there will be so much more we can do with the drone show. And even Disneyland Paris is an example of really pushing the limits. But a major difference from Paris's drone show is that one, you need a theme park ticket. And tonight's show is absolutely free for anybody who happens to be at Disney Springs, which show number 1 at 9 o'clock gathered a very, very big crowd. And something to keep in mind, a huge part of the operational expense of this show that AT&T is sponsoring is Disney had a tremendous amount of staff out to direct traffic. I mean, a lot of people. So aside from the hard cost of the drones, the audio system, and the crew that can fly the drones, there was a ton of manpower out this evening directing traffic. It did bring all of the corridors of Disney Springs to a grinding halt, and they had to guide people because people don't make good decisions on their own. That's the polite way to say it. So when we think about one of these happening back home at Disneyland, there's a couple of requirements that we need. Obviously, drones. But along with drones come a lot of regulations from the government. I'm sure it's different state by state, but if we just talk about the technical aspects of what Disney would need, is you need a staging area for the drones to take off and then return back to. Tonight, they use a parking lot that's on the far corner of Disney Springs. You also need a massive centralized open space for people to watch the drone show. At 9 o'clock, I was right where the drones go off. It was pretty good for everything except for you could tell that the Death Star isn't a true sphere. It's more like a half circle that, you know, is rounded for where everybody's watching inside of the horseshoe. So you do need a big area of space, and this area was shaped like a horseshoe where there were people to the left, the right, and to front ahead of the drones. Therefore, people weren't completely around the drones, allowing them to cut a little bit of corners on how they would articulate some of the different scenes. And obviously, the drones don't make a lot of noise. Hardly any noise pollution at all comes from the drones. You could hear them when they were flying in. It just sounds like a bunch of fans going. But you do need a centralized sound system so people can understand what's happening in the show, because music is the emotion to storytelling. With all of that said, the overall ground of noise pollution is quite small with a drone show. So once again, when we think about taking this back home to Disneyland, where would we need to have a nighttime show that would need to be quieter than, say, fireworks over at the castle? One of the great things about this technology is how quickly you could change out the scenes or the different vignettes that happen through it. With programming the drones, you basically have flying pixels that are inside of the air. And each pixel or light has the ability to change its color and its brightness. So therefore, adding in a new character or a new scene from a movie or a promotion that's happening at the park, pretty easy to pull off. And it was fun to listen to the audience, because the audience will always tell you what they're excited about and what they're not excited about. Mandalorian and Grogu got one of the hardest pops of the night, as well as when everybody heard Star-Lord's voice for Guardians. Those were a couple of the ones that really popped out. Oh, and then Star Wars, like New Hope, like real Star Wars. That one popped hard too. So with fireworks shows or World of Color, it is a lot of effort to animate new scenes, to resequence water jets, fireworks, laser lights. Like, it is a lot of work to put in a new character that's gotten suddenly very popular, or to celebrate a milestone for 50th anniversary of that, 30th anniversary of this. A drone show is so much easier to program in one sequence in the overall programming of the fleet, giving whoever's in charge of the show the ability to change it and change it often, and to do shows that are based around different narratives, like to do a show before the show if a sponsor is willing to pay to do another show. So very interesting. I was just informed that standing on this bridge is not a good place to watch the show. Which is interesting, because it seemed to me that there was a horseshoe of people watching at the 9 o'clock show, and I definitely wanted to get a side view and a direct view. But it looks like we're going to get a side view and a top of a parking garage view. That's where we're going to watch it next to figure out where it's at. And the parking garage, that actually goes even better with my Disneyland theory that I want to break down to you. Of course, when I get back home to Disneyland and I'm standing and where I believe that drone show will pop up back home. Oh, so far away, but I can't wait. All right, so great news about back home at Disneyland. I'm on the parking garage. I am maybe a half a city block from the show. When I was watching it earlier down on the water, it was loud, and everybody around you, that's all they could hear. It's absolutely silent from this far away. So this is really, really good for my proposed plans back home. But I was advised, hey, the view from the top of the parking garage is sick, and it is not sick at all. It sucks. All right, friends, here at Cirque du Soleil. Back over in here is where the drone show takes off. But now we are gonna take off back home to Disneyland, where I can break down how I think all of this could find its way to the Disneyland Resort as part of Disneyland Forward. Oh, it feels so good to be back home in Disneyland and back home in my natural habitat, a theme park parking lot. So when we look at where a drone show would fit in back home at Disneyland, there is one option that's probably pretty apparent by now where my opinion lies. But let's break down why I think the Toy Story parking lot, when it becomes a theme park, will be the perfect place for drones at home at Disneyland. I think that magic trick of going from park to parking lot across the country deserves a subscribe to Hey Bricky. Thank you so much for subscribing, where I put up 3 videos a week studying Disneyland's past so we can better predict Disneyland's future. Now let's predict where those drones are gonna go. The fireworks from Disneyland will be totally visible from the Disneyland expansion that will happen just north of the Disneyland Hotel, because fireworks are shot off every night backstage at Toontown, roughly where Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is. That's why that land rope drops twice a day, in the morning and then again at 10 o'clock at night when it opens back up post fireworks. So anyone that's ever watched the fireworks from the Mickey and Friends parking garage knows you've got a pretty good view. So I would assume whatever happens there, you would also be able to see the fireworks. Because don't forget, the hotel that was planned for that parking lot, one of the things they were gonna do there was a rooftop restaurant that would have premier firework viewing. So that part of the expansion already has a nighttime show. And then when we hop on the other side of the Pixar Place Hotel, that future expansion area of Disneyland Forward, that will also have a nighttime show because it's part of DCA. Go back across the bridge or tunnel that you went in to get over to those new theme park lands, and you can go watch World of Color. 2 shows nightly, tons of room to watch the show. A bigger park won't limit the ability to see that show because, newsflash, the second showing is normally pretty empty. World of Color is a perfect nighttime show for Disney's California Adventure. But notice, Disney hasn't replicated this in any of their other parks because turns out putting a lot of tech underneath water 20 hours out of the day means a ton of maintenance. And over the last decade, we've seen the water come out of the lagoon, we've seen it get refurbished time and time again. Like, just keep in mind, water is trying to kill everything around it, even though we need water to survive. It's a real double-edged sword, that water. And so obviously, when Disney is thinking about a third gate over in the Toy Story parking lot, they're not going to repeat World of Color, and they're not going to be able to do fireworks. So that leaves this space right here being the perfect home for a drone show in Anaheim. And why I think this will be a perfect place is, if you remember in today's video, when I go not that far from the body of water where they're doing the drone show, when I went over to the parking garage, I couldn't hear a thing. So therefore, we are really close to residential folks over here, but no closer than the Disneyland Hotel is to the folks that live over on Walnut. And soon I will be doing a video about how close we are to the people and why I don't think that's going to limit Disney doing a theme park here. There's lots of creative ways that Disneyland Forward is designed to make sure that Disney is as nice as possible to its neighbors. And this park has this plot of land for future expansion has a different set of rules than the other plots of land. So we'll address that in a soon to come Disneyland Forward video. With whatever does show up here, and I'm telling you it's going to be a theme park, not more shopping. I've already beat that topic to death. You can watch the other videos inside the Disneyland Forward video series. But what will come here, space and being polite to the neighbors, will be a very top concern. That's why a drone show would work perfectly in this lot. We've already seen the Angels do a drone show just across the highway. Obviously they do it over their parking lot. They have a lot of space over there to work with, but we've already seen the city of Anaheim have a drone show, so one moving over here won't be that big of a problem. Here are the creative workarounds to make it work here. There will need to be some sort of central plaza or central meeting space where the drones can do their show, because currently you're not allowed to fly drones over the top of guests. So therefore, anticipate some sort of body of water or some sort of area that would be off limit to guests. And I'm assuming it would be centralized and not on one of the park's edges. And if that area is completely landlocked, as we saw with the drone show at Disney Springs, there is that staging area where all the drones flew in to do their show. And somehow it made me love the drones even more. Like, this little squadron of drones were flying in. I don't know, it made them seem like incredibly human to me. But a body of water in the center of this park could act as a nighttime drone space, and that body of water could have some sort of platform in the middle of it. Disney's cast members could let the drones launch off from the water, therefore eliminating that area where the drones fly in. Because space is a premium with this location, so therefore if the drone show and its stage was all centralized and the drones lived there all day long, how World of Color lives beneath the water, I'm not suggesting the drones would live beneath the water, but if there was a loading platform that looked like a fountain during the day or some sort of stage or sculpture that the drones could be placed on and then take off at night, that would work and be a really good use of space. However, if the drone platform was placed close to one of the edges of this potential theme park, and there was a way for the drones to fly in and not go over guests, that would work as well. It would also sort of set up a amphitheater type vibe at night, which nobody would really pay attention to during the day, just like how we do the magic trick with Fantasmic over at the Rivers of America inside of Disneyland. So just imagine a horseshoe type shaped park or water that comes off the edge of one of the parks. Could totally be a part of the storytelling during the day and be a part of nighttime showing at night. Would easily work in a small space and look good for both utility purposes. If they do decide to do it on the edge of this soon-to-be theme park, this is how it could easily work. They're going to have deep backstage here to get as far away as possible from the citizens of Anaheim. That's no big deal. They could do their backstage preparation space and then their backstage for attraction space, essentially making a giant donut around this space to where they're pushing everything in as far as possible, which will make for an amazing theme park because we'll have nice tight sight lines and you'll get lost in here like you get lost in Galaxy's Edge, where you can never see what's on the other side of the spires, and you also never get to hear what's on the other side of the spires. That same design concept would work here as well. So if there is one area where they really push out the show buildings, that show building could be the loading area for the drones, where they would just simply go straight up into the air, perform their show, and come back down, and never ever interfere with the guests whatsoever. And hey, while we're dreaming, if this park does end up having sort of the donut outer banks that I'm predicting, what if the drone show literally just went around you everywhere in the park? What if this park was just surrounded by pixels every night? And you could just look up wherever you're at and they were all around you, showing you an amazing Disney nighttime show that every guest could see from every corner of the park. That technology will be possible depending on the layout of what they build here, but that technology will be possible by the time we get to see in a theme park here, which is more than a decade away. But nighttime shows are very important because that's what keeps guests in the park as long as possible. There are plenty of times when people are tired and they're done with being in the sun and they just want to go home. But the promise of that kiss goodnight that Walt always wanted, that is one of the things that keeps people in the parks longer. That is one of the things that keeps people consuming longer. So having a nighttime show is essential for every Disney park. And I feel like that essential show for this park would be drones. It just fits so well with the space restriction, the noise restrictions. And keep in mind, the drone show that we saw in today's video, that's the worst this will ever look. The drone technology is only gonna get better. Right now, each drone has like its individual pixel. What happens when each drone has a pixel ring, where each drone can add more depth to whatever we're seeing being created by pixels in the sky? That would also equate to less drones, less noise, less space that would need to be taken. And if you have any questions at all about Disneyland Forward, make sure you check out this playlist right here, where I'm constantly adding in videos predicting intelligently with the designer's mindset what is possible for how the Disneyland Resort could grow. Thank you so much for showing up to this bi-coastal Disneyland Forward video, and there's more of these to come.